Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Marie. Today I'm back with yet another video. Today I'll be doing the wrap-up video, or the books I read for the month of February, so let's just get right into it. So for the month of February, it was the BookTube games, and I managed to read 33 books. I honestly don't know how I did it. Basically, I read more books than there were days in the month, so huge accomplishment on my end, but this will not be happening ever again because I don't know how I did it. I don't think I can ever replicate it again unless I just read manga. So this video, I'm not going to talk about all 33 books that I read because can you imagine how long that video is going to be? It's going to be like 40 minutes and I don't have time to film that. You guys don't have time to watch that, so we're not going to do that, or I'm not going to do that. And to also make things a little bit less repetitive, because I do a lot of reading vlogs as well, and because I do the reading vlogs and I do at the end of the reading vlogs like a wrap up in terms of the books that I read, my thoughts, like my overall thoughts, there's really no need for me, I think, for me to rehash what I have said already in a previous video, because if you guys watch my videos, you guys probably already know what I thought about certain books, and there's just no point for me to redo it again and again. And so for this video, I'm not going to go and talk about some of the books over and over again, especially because I read so many books this past month that I just feel it's gonna be so much. I can't, guys. I just can't. So that being said, if you're interested in finding out more information in terms of Interment by Samir Ahmed, An Affair of Poisons by Addie Thorley, Empress of All Seasons by Emma Kojin, as well as The Chaos of Standing Still by Jessica Brody. I will link my 24-hour readathon vlog for you guys to check it out because I talked all 4 of these books relatively in depth, especially at the end of the video, so definitely check that out. Then if you're looking for more information for The Bells by Danielle Clayton, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, as well as Pride by E.B. Zaboy, I'll link above my reading vlog that I did to celebrate Black History Month. So now that I have those books out of the way, there are 6 other books that I really want to talk about in this video. The first one is The Girl King by Mimi Yu. This book is an Asian-inspired fantasy novel. It follows 2 sisters, Lu and Min. Lu has basically known that all her life as the eldest daughter, she was going to become the heir to the throne and basically the first empress. But then Min, on the other hand, lives a relatively timid life in her sister's shadow. Then the day arrives for announcing the heir, and their father, the emperor, essentially shocks everyone by announcing a male cousin as the heir. The key word here, guys, is male cousin, emphasis on the male. And then afterward, due to circumstances, Lu is essentially forced to flee and escape, but she's trying to also reclaim back her birthright while also trying to win some allies. Meanwhile though, Min is left at court and she has somehow realized that she has unlocked some forbidden magic. And then the rest of the book just essentially follows their journey, and at the end of the day, it might just end up being the 2 sisters fighting against each other for the throne. So guys, this was such a disappointing read. I mean, I gave it 3 stars because it was just mediocre. I mean, it's not like a book I didn't hate, so I didn't give it 1 star. It wasn't terrible, so I didn't give it 2 stars. So it was just literally just most mediocre, you know, tepid book I have ever read that I was really excited for, because this was literally a book that was one of my most anticipated reads, ends up being one of my most disappointed reads. It's not like a hated book, but just very disappointed in general, so 3 stars all around. Everything about this book was honestly just so bland. I was never invested with any of the characters. I found Lu to be mediocre at best and Min to be overall really childish and very naive. The one interesting part that I liked about this book was the other realm that was introduced in the prologue, so literally the first like 3-4 pages of this book. But the author didn't really go too much into it, so there was a missed opportunity, I think, that the author could have really utilized that would have made this book so much more fascinating, but unfortunately that was not the case. So overall, at the end of the day, this book was just so meh to me. I mean, there's no great action scenes, no interesting characters, a very dull execution of what could have been a very fascinating plot. So yeah, I was just disappointed with this Asian-inspired fantasy. I mean, I'm trying to really read a lot more Asian-inspired fantasy because there's not that many out there, and so when I saw this one, I was really fascinated by it, but it was just very lacking. Then the next book that I want to discuss is CIRCE by Madeline Miller. So this book just essentially follows the life of CIRCE, the CIRCE that we all know in the Greek mythology, from when she's born to her later stages in life. And the book spans through centuries and includes a lot of the famous myths, legends, and heroes that we already know. So I like this book so much more than Song of Achilles. I think that one I gave 3.5 stars, but really, if I didn't like just the Greek mythology, I would have just given it 3 stars. This one I gave 4 stars. This book is just absolutely stunning, and I love the way how Madeline depicted CIRCE from when she was a child to when she becomes exiled. The struggles that CIRCE went through at a young age when she was essentially just treated as an outcast even from her own family was really well portrayed. And the way how she changed and endured through the ages despite the many obstacles. The one thing I would say is that if you don't really enjoy Greek mythology, then I might not recommend this one, mainly because this book literally just talks about her life. There's no real big climax to be had, there's no big revealment, nothing like that. It just goes about her daily life from when she is a child, all the struggles that she faced there as an outcast, to when she becomes exiled, and like when she was exiled, like faced through like generations, by the way, centuries and centuries. So there's a lot of time that goes by, and so a lot of people have complained that it's a bit slow, there's no like action, etc., and that is true. But for me, I really love Greek mythology, so for me, I really like when some of the introductions or the little like tidbits of other heroes and myths and legends that I know already from other Greek mythology were in this book as well, because I just like that. So for me, I thought it was fascinating, but I can definitely see why other people might not find it as fascinating. And the most interesting part for me is the fact that it wasn't just we were talking about these like other heroes, etc. It was talking and finding about these heroes through CIRCE's point of view, because she's still exiled, so she's literally hearing it through the grapevine when other gods visit her, or when she hears information from like the sailors that stop by her island, etc. So everything she hears is through the grapevine. So it's really interesting for me, at least, to see how those heroes are depicted in a certain light that's not usually like their own POVs, because usually when I read Greek mythology, it's told in their perspectives. So this was interesting to me, so I can see how other people were regarding these heroes. So I just found that super interesting to me. I mean, that's just me though, because I like Greek mythology. One thing I did notice is that for those who enjoy Song of Achilles, didn't really enjoy this one. Those who enjoyed CIRCE didn't really enjoy Song of Achilles, and I definitely feel like that applies. Let me know down below if you have read both of them and you either hated both of them or loved both of them, because so far what I've seen at the trend so far on Goodreads is that either one likes the other or one hates the other. They don't like both and they don't hate both. So let me know down below if you're one of the few who, you know, you basically just blown my theory out the water. But that's my theory for now, because I think Song of Achilles is just okay. This book I enjoyed so much more. The next book that I want to discuss is The Center of the Universe by VOROS. This is actually an arc, so I'll be discussing this before it even comes out. This one comes out on April 2nd. This book follows a girl called Grace, whose mother is a celebrity news anchor called Gigi. One day her mother disappears and the news crews arrive, and everyone's just speculating as to what really happened. While trying to figure out what really happened, Grace is still trying to continue with her own life. And that includes getting to know her crush Milo a little bit more. Plus, she's also starting to find out some of the secrets from her mother's past. So this book, I am sad to say that this is an unpopular opinion compared to all the other reviews I've seen so far on Goodreads, because I give this book 2 stars. End of the day, I was just not impressed with this book. Mostly, I was disappointed with the fact that the premise seemed to follow around the fact that this book was supposed to be about her mother's disappearance and all about that, but that wasn't really the case at all. In fact, the book seems to mostly focus on Grace trying to live her own life, dealing with her romance, dealing with her love for astronomy, as well as dealing with her mommy's issue. And the reason for this mommy issue is, number one, her grandmother, her mother, and herself, they're all called Grace. So I forget what her grandmother's nickname is, but she has a nickname to basically differentiate herself from the other 2 Graces. And of course her mother is Gigi, and Grace herself is known as Grace. But also the fact that her grandmother is an actress, like a relatively famous actress, like semi-famous at this point. Her mother is a famous celebrity news anchor, and then there's Grace herself. So she has 2 major like female powerful figures in front of her, or like above her I guess, that she definitely has some like mommy issues. So I was just kind of surprised that this book focused more about that versus the actual disappearance, because I think that's my biggest pet peeve when books kind of show a premise or kind of showcases a book that's going to be about something else and highlights it as such, but then in reality it's not what it is, which is why sometimes I don't like going into books knowing too much, because then I become disappointed like I was in this case, because it was just so different than what I had expected. I also found that the pacing of this book lagged a lot, especially at the beginning and at the end. It just felt so slow at times. But I did enjoy one element in this book, and that was at the end when Grace and her mother's relationship started to turn for the better. And I thought that the author did a really good job with actually depicting the ups and downs of a mother-daughter relationship, especially when you factor in the fact that her mother is a celebrity. So there's definitely a lot of tension there, a lot of relationships that needs to be resolved, like problems that needs to be resolved there. So I thought the author did a good job with that aspect, but that was pretty much it for the entire book. So overall, I think if you have watched this video, you now know that this book isn't really about the mystery. So if you go in with it knowing that it's not really about the mystery element to it, then I think you're fine. And if you also realize and understand that this book is mostly about figuring out your own path and discovering the strong yet tenuous mother-daughter bond. So yeah, that's how I felt about this book. I mean, I was a little disappointed because I just hadn't great expectations going in. I was excited for like a contemporary thriller suspense kind of novel, but that wasn't the case at all. I was just let down because I went in with certain expectations and those expectations were not met. So I think that's my biggest pet peeve. A lot of times when I talk about books I don't like, it's mostly because of the fact that other than the elements of those books, but the main reason why I get so disappointed with books is because I went in with certain expectation and or the premise were saying that this book would be about a certain thing, but that wasn't the case, and I become so disappointed about that, and it really bugs me, and I feel like that really influences my personal opinions about the book because I went in with certain expectations. And so sometimes it's just better not to know the summary of what the book is about because you go in with wrong expectations. That's what I've learned. So the next two books that I want to talk about is part of a series, and that is The Cruel Prince as well as The Wicked King by Holly Black. I don't actually have the books with me anymore because I brought them to work so I can actually ship them out to my parents' place because my room right now has become a little bit crowded with all the books I'm getting, so I'm shipping them to my parents' place. So the series just follows that 10 years ago, Jude's parents were murdered and her and her sister were whisked off to the court of fairy, where they now live with their stepfather of a sort. And despite hating everyone there essentially, Jude tries her best to fit in. But there's one little thing that is basically making that impossible, and that is the fact that all fae seems to despise humans, and that includes Cardan, the youngest prince. And then as the story continues, Jude tries to find her place in the court of fairy, as well as learning about her own capacity for treachery and bloodshed. So guys, I am absolutely trash for this books. I mean, I love these books so much. I gave it 5 stars. But the thing is, I think objectively speaking, these books are not particularly great. But I don't rate my books based on objectively, so I'm just going to talk about the books how I personally feel, and that's 5 stars, guys, because I am so trash for this series. And I will also like to state the fact that even though I know that Jude and Carter's relationship is considered as toxic, but at the same time, I kind of understand why it is the way it is. And the reason for that is because I think that in the Fae society, it's a society where you really need to learn how to hide your own feelings because it can be used against you. And because of that, I am absolutely trash for this romance because I think this is like the most heart-wrenching type of romance that we all secretly love, and that's why I think everyone is all about this romance, even though we know on the other hand that's extremely toxic, but we're gonna roll with that. My other favorite part about this book is Jude herself. I think she's such a badass, like strong female character. She grew up in a very cutthroat type of society, and the way how she manipulated all of these situations so they can be in her favor is just so well done. It's ingenious, it's smart, it's badass, and she's also great with a sword. So need I say more about a badass female character? The one element that I didn't like so much is Tarwyn, I want to say her name is. That's Jude's twin sister. At first, I simply put her as the fact that she's just naive, she's innocent, she doesn't really understand anything, she's very sheltered. But as the book continued, I realized that she's just someone that you simply cannot trust. She's the type of person where she really only cares about herself, her own happiness, her own future, with no regard to anyone else. Whereas Jude, even though she's very manipulative and whatever, but she tries to fit in everyone that she loves in the big picture. So that's kind of the key difference, I think, between the twin sisters. So at the end of the day, I am so excited and so hyped for the third book. I understand now why everyone is talking about how they hate the endings, because literally both the first 2 books, their endings are the biggest cliffhangers, and I am just dying right now because I have so many questions, and I also want to see more of Jude and Cardan's like relationship and romance sizzle. So I'm just so excited for the next book. I mean, I'm so sad they had to wait another year. I feel like mistakes were made here because I should not have read these first 2 books. I think as soon as I read the first book, I was like, oh my god. I went immediately to Barnes & Noble so I can grab the second book and so I can devour it. And after that, I was just very sad because the next book doesn't even come out until next year. So mistakes were made here, guys, because I should not have read the books because now I'm just sad overall. But I love the book so much, guys. The next book that I want to discuss is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by BRIGID KEMMERER. I enjoyed this book so much more than I initially anticipated. This book was so good, guys. So this book is essentially a Beauty and the Beast retelling with some twist to it. Ren, the prince, is cursed and has essentially spent the past 300+ times reliving the autumn of his 18th birthday. And at the end of each season, right before it hits winter, he turns into a monster and it basically just kills everyone. Within the first 2 cycles, he has killed off everyone in the castle with the exception of his commander or general, Gray. And I'm just really impressed by that, by the way. And at the beginning of each cycle, Gray is tasked with finding a new girl for Ren to fall in love with and to break the curse. This time, Gray brought Harper, who lives in our world in DC specifically. And this time, there is so much more at stake, including Harper's own family, Ren's country and its people, and just so much more. Like I already said, this book was so good. I give it 5 stars. It's probably one of my most favorite books of this year already. I'm just gonna call it right now. This is also one of the rare times where I actually have second lead syndrome. I don't usually get second lead syndrome, I think, for the most part, except when I watch like K-dramas and stuff, in which case I'm usually second lead all the way. But for books, that doesn't usually happen. But for this book, guys, I loved Gray so much. I really shipped Gray and Harper for pretty much most of the book. Their chemistry, their interactions with each other were just so solid and so perfect. Of course, though, we obviously know that she ends up with Ren because at the end of the day, he is a prince and that's how fairy tales work. I also really enjoyed reading about Harper because she was such a strong female character. She had a physical disability, but that did not stop her by any means. Time and time again, she had shown herself to be brave, courageous, and just very determined. And that wasn't just to find her way back home, but also to save Ren's people. As for Ren, though, it did take me some time for me to warm up to him because, like I said, I was pretty much shipping Gray and Harper for pretty much most of the book, so it did take me some time for me to get on board with the fact that it's going to be Ren and Harper at the end of the day. But also when you consider the fact that after playing this role for 300 plus times and has turned into a monster 300 plus times and have killed many of the girls that were brought over, I'm not surprised that he was a little bit distant, and end of the day he ended up being very overly cautious and he liked to plan things out far in advance. Basically, he was always thinking and doing everything with an ulterior motive. But I like the fact that Harper called him out on that so many times because, like I said, she's a very strong female lead character and I really enjoy reading about her. So this book, overall, loved it so much. I am so excited for the sequel and I cannot wait for it to come out. Unfortunately, though, it's probably not going to come out until next year because this book literally just came out end of January, I want to say. So have some time before the next book comes out, and I am just dying for that wait, guys, because this book is so good. And the last and final book that I want to talk about on this channel is actually a non-fiction book that I read, or technically listened to, this past month, and that is Radium Girls by Kate Moore. This is going to be one of the few non-fiction books that I talk about on this channel because I don't usually read non-fiction, but this book just blew me out of the water. I mean, this book I gave 5 stars because the book is everything. So this book is a non-fiction novel that dives into the history of the Radium Girls. Radium was first discovered around the 1910s, 1920s, and was seen as some sort of miracle element, magic wonder drug to the medical community. And one of its many uses for radium is that it creates this like fluorescent glowing light in the dark, so it's actually used a lot for military use. So that's why around that time period the use of radium was really high and a lot of people were using it. And then this one company, the United States Radium Corporation, started to create these factories where they hired lower and middle class young women to work there, where they essentially just paint these dials for the clocks and stuff for the military, the war effort. And so in the beginning, no one really knew the harmful effects of radium because no one had really done a lot of the testing. They had just discovered it and they thought it was a miracle, wonder drug, etc. So no one had really realized that it's actually extremely harmful to yourself. And so the girls were literally painting their bodies with this like glow-in-the-dark kind of paint, and the way how they were taught essentially to paint these dials, because they're very tiny and very delicate, is that they would dip these paintbrushes into the paint, lick it so they create that very like fine tip point whatever needle-like thing, and then paint. So they were just basically digesting the radium. And as time continued, the girls started to see all these adverse side effects to the radium. The things that they faced in this book was just absolutely horrific. I think this book is just amazing and everyone should just really read it for yourself and kind of learn and just educate yourself on this matter, because actually after I had listened to the audiobook, I was basically just discussing about this to everyone and just trying to get everyone to read this, because I realized that no one actually knows about the Radium Girls. Like when I asked my coworkers, no one knew anything about the Radium Girls. Like I didn't even know this was a thing. So the fact that no one really knows about it and that this book is just so riveting and just this book is just so good, you guys. I mean, the way how Kate Moore describes all their struggles, because she actually went into the details about every like the young girls' lives and, you know, their family when they're growing up, etc. So you really become really connected to these women and you see them like getting all these terrible medical problems and complications, and it's just so heartbreaking and so riveting to just listen to it. I mean, I did it on audiobook, so I definitely recommend that, but I think this book is just so good. But at the end of the day, I do know that because some of the stuff in this book is very gruesome, it's not for everyone, But I personally thought it was extremely fascinating that I was non-stop listening to. Like, I just had to listen to it. This was a long audiobook too. I think this was like 16 hours or something, and I still had it 2 times the speed, but it was a very long audiobook. But I loved every minute of it because not only did I feel that I was more educated afterward, but also I feel so connected and so invested in all these women's lives that I just couldn't believe that what they had to face and how the corporation was just lying about it and all that stuff. It's just absolutely fascinating to me, and I definitely recommend this book. So anyways, these are all the books that I want to talk about in this video. I know I ended this video on a very like intense note because the Radium Girls, but that book was just so good. I don't think I have ever seen a bad review on this book on Goodreads as of yet, and everyone who has read it seems to really like it when I was talking about it to other people, so definitely recommend that book. But anyways, that's all the books I want to talk about in this video. I'm just continuing about that book. That book is just so good, guys. So anyways, that's all the books I want to talk about in this video. Let me know down below if you have read any of the books that I had read this past month. If you did, if you enjoyed them, let me know down below. If you didn't enjoy them, let me know down below as well. But as always, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe down below. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!